you very much, man. Hi there, good afternoon. As he said, I'm from What 3 Words, and I'm here to discuss with you a very large problem around the world. I'm then also going to talk to you a little bit about how What 3 Words has actually overcome that problem with an ingenious solution. And then also, we're going to go through some of the use cases and applications of how that's going on, and leave as much time as possible for Q&A. So that problem that we have around the world is that the world is poorly addressed. What do I mean by addresses? I mean street addresses. Where do you live? Where are you going to? Where is that delivery being sent to? Because actually, if you consider around the whole world, about 75% of the world actually has inadequate addresses around there, or no addresses whatsoever. And that causes a very large problem. And we can illustrate that here with this image here. This is from Google Maps, and you can see they've done a good job of mapping some of the roads there. They have street names on them. But if we actually look at the reality of the situation, it looks something more like this, which is actually a great big informal settlement of people living around there, and they don't have adequate addresses to talk about where they are living. Now, that has great implications for these people. One is frustrating, talking about meeting up and things like that. But also consider yourselves, all the economic activities that you have to do with a street address at this moment in time. If you wanted to set up a bank account, for example, you need an address to do that. If you wanted to go off and vote, you need an address, or even harness the power of the internet and actually order something online and have it delivered to your home. You need an address to do that. So it's a very large problem for a great number of people around the world. But then if we consider places where we do have addresses at the moment, what we find is that actually it's still very inefficient and frustrating for a lot of these people. There's massive variance in standards, the zip codes in comparison to postcodes in the UK, and variance in qualities. Postcodes don't really work that well in rural England. Take London, for example. If I was to say, come and meet me at Church Road, or do a delivery at Church Road, if you were to type that into Google, what you'll find is there's actually 16 different church roads. You can cause a lot of great confusion, and it can lead to a lot of inefficiencies with deliveries. And this is illustrated by this fact here, which is that 0.5% of deliveries are failing in the UK at the moment, and that equates to about £800 million. And that's a very small percentage. We had some of the earlier speakers talking about how 1% saving can save millions. This is, again, another use case where inefficient addressing systems in a country like the UK is actually affecting drastically bottom lines of logistics companies. And it also has an impact on customer service. I went through on Twitter and looked up addresses, poor addresses, and what you can find is a lot of third-party logistics companies or retailers as well having big difficulties in the UK delivering their customers and then delivering a very poor user experience to them, and that's an issue for them. Now, what we need is a solution for the whole world in which people are able to talk about addresses in a single format, and it turns out we already do have something like that. What it is coordinates. Coordinates are wonderful. They're very specific, ubiquitous around the whole world. The one big problem they have is they're not at all human-friendly. People don't use this format to communicate where they need to go to or where they need something delivered to. And that's where What 3 Words comes in. What we've done, taken the world, and we look to split it up into 57 trillion 3 by 3 meter squares, so quite a few of them. And then what we did is we took each one of those squares and gave it a unique string of 3 words. So something like index home raft is the square outside my office in West London, and that's the only one with that 3-word address. Now that simply corresponds with a GPS coordinate. So we're taking coordinates and converting them into words, human-friendly words. And what that now means is that where there are places that don't have addresses, they now have an address, and where we do have them, we can make them more efficient and more accurate with signifying a doorway or a parkway or something like that. Here we can see our mobile app. That this whole system is actually a 12 megabyte algorithm which bundles up, and it works completely offline. So you can go off and download the app now and look up your 3-word address, which is always quite interesting to go and do. And this system of a 12 megabyte algorithm is being bundled up into other systems and other people's software. We have an online API which can be wrapped up and attaches to the endpoints. And now what I do is I'll go through a few examples of where that's happening around our partner network. So from navigation, a very obvious one. We are integrated into NavMe, the largest offline mapping navigation app. all the way through from GIS, which is sort of asset management and tracking, through to travel listings as well. We have a lot of uses in that. And we're also actually adopted by, this is actually, it's meant to be 7 countries. Nationally, the national postal systems have said, we want to start using 3-word addresses off the shelf. The first country to do that was Mongolia, and there actually we're really seeing the great ecosystem of people who are able to use and share 3-word addresses, order pizzas online, have it delivered to them there. And actually, in Nigeria, NiPost just recently came on board and said they wanted to start accepting 3-word addresses. And consider this is 180 million people in the African continent who great majority have access to their phones, increasing disposable income, and e-commerce is taking off in a big way, but you need to have a decent, adequate addressing system to go and deliver to those people over there. A bit of a nod to our host, so thank you very much for organizing such a good event as well, but P3 Logistics, they've started incorporating 3-word addresses onto their warehouses, because if you think about warehouses and the locations they're in, they're outside the periphery of cities invariably, their buildings look very similar, and actually the postcodes and addresses that you get to these places actually don't necessarily take you to the right entrance. So they're using 3-word addresses to direct lorries and trucks to the right places there, and looking to incorporate that for their customers to help innovate them being more efficient in their services as well. So a very encouraging innovation happening there. Recently, we just did a large partnership with Daimler Mercedes, and this is them looking to build our technology and the software into the head units of their vehicles. And what's happening here is they're using 3-word addresses as the input for destination. And what I haven't mentioned before is that actually 3-word addresses is actually the first addressing system of its type designed for voice input of destination. Because if you consider the user experience within vehicles, at the moment, voice systems don't really work. And what our system has is a very good ability to understand what people are saying and where they actually want to go. We nail it on that front. And that has huge implications for the human-to-machine interface when we think about autonomous vehicles coming down the line, for example. Back in the logistics scope, Aramex, a very, very large logistic provider out in the Middle East, they've incorporated the software into their core systems. And now we're actually seeing some of the data coming back of the efficiency gains coming back. I've just put up one here. There's more. We just released it yesterday, actually. And this is the cumulative time of 100 deliveries. And you see, with regular addresses, it's going over 7 hours. And using 3-word addresses, they're going up just over 4 hours. That is a phenomenal saving. I think it's about 40% reduction in time. And consider this. UPS say if they could save each one of their drivers or their couriers 1 mile of driving per day, that equates to a $50 million saving at the end of the year. These are the people who don't have doors on the side of their cars and they're not allowed to turn right or left or on there. We're able to deliver monumental reductions in time and travel, which actually affects bottom line efficiencies in logistics. Close to my home in the UK, I referred to that statistic earlier on about 0.5% of deliveries failing in the UK. Well, this company here, they had about, it's direct today, they had about 30 deliveries which were failing, and by using 3-word addresses and incorporating it into their system, they're able to reduce the number of failure deliveries to about 4 or 5 a day, a massive reduction, and increasing their efficiencies and also their customer experience that they're delivering. Another sign is that you've got in the taxi space, so this is Bixi over in India. They've incorporated 3-word addresses for the destination because it creates a better user experience and they actually know where they're going to go to, and also increases efficiencies with things like supply liquidity as well, which we can talk about. In the humanitarian aspects, great number of applications. This is just one with the UN. They've wrapped our software up into the disaster relief app, so when their aid workers go into a region, they're able to, remember this works completely offline, they're able to find their 3-word address, communicate that to their colleagues and other first responders, and expedite the assistance that they're lending around there. Here in Prague, with travel listings, a very popular tourist destination, lots of nooks and crannies, lots of alleyways, and we see travel listings that are actually looking and taking 3-word addresses and communicating that to tourists and saying, you need to go to X, Y, and Z location, or this 3-word address here, this 3-word address here. And they're using 3-word addresses to here actually talk about romantic areas in which you can go for walks. So in total, we're being used by over 400 businesses, putting into the workflows. We've got a presence in over 170 countries of people using our software, give and take. And I'll leave you with the thoughts about what we're actually trying to achieve with our system and addressing around the world, is that One, it's very frustrating when you don't know where you're going to, and we want to ease that for individuals and help that. We want to help businesses grow and be more efficient, and then also in the human aspect, we really want to help those urgent situations where people really need to have help come to them straight away, and making the world a safer place on that side. So, thank you very much, and we'll look for some questions.
Great, thanks very much, Tom. Let's see what everybody's brought in terms of questions. But I've got one just in terms of how long has it taken you to set this up, and who sets these 3 words?
Okay, so we've been going for about 4 years now, just over 4 years, and we have taken on, we've got about 40 employees now. We've grown very rapidly in the last year. We took a lot of effort in making sure that the product was very robust. And important to note that these 3 word addresses are actually predetermined by us. We intelligently distribute them. It actually follows 2 rules, which I can explain. First one is that shorter, more commonly used words in a language are actually populated in the regions which that language is most widely spoken. And the second rule, which is very important, especially with voice, is that similar sounding 3 word addresses are populated away from each other on the planet. And this means that you can detect errors with addresses very quickly and correct for it. So, example for that would be index, home, raft. Maybe you misheard me, and you think I said index, home, rafts. Well, actually, one's in London, and the other's in Melbourne, Australia. So you can very quickly work out where you mean to be. It's predetermined. It has to be a standard, because we have people like emergency services, the UN using this. And if we started changing those words, actually, it would defy the point of why we're doing this, which is a standard.
Or it would be hell of an expensive cab ride, that one, to get to Melbourne.
Yeah.
I looked at mine, by the way. I am Pine Jumpy Mini. My house, in fact, by the looks of it. I'm not sure what that says, but anyway. So, number of questions there, interesting ones. How does the company make money? How can I put the 3 words into Google? When can I put the 3 words into Google Maps? So what's happening with the development of it? And I guess what's the revenue model?
So in the first instance about Google, we have engagements with all these major companies out there at the moment. But if you had the app, you can look to then push that 3 word address and that GPS coordinate into Google Navigation or any other navigation system of your choice there as well. In terms of revenue, we will operate in a very similar model to something like Google, which is when businesses are gaining from a massive efficiency saving or a demonstrable gain in user experience or something, then there's a cost associated with that. And we only charge for when you need to know what a 3 word address is in geospatial terms, in a coordinate term there. And that's done on a rate limit, so there's a fraction of a transaction every time you ping our server or our system that way.
Question popping up there as well about Amazon. There should be huge savings. Are they using you? Why are they not using you yet? Or
yeah. Well, I mean, we've been going for 4 years, and what we've achieved in the last year is a massive amount of growth. We have engagements with these companies, and they are very large in their organizations, and we see them changing. They have to take up all these new technologies. We will look to see what will happen in the future. Watch this space.
I like the, can I buy 1 square and use my own 3 words?
Unfortunately not. It defies the point. They're predetermined by us. They're not going to change in any way, sorry.
There was one I think I saw earlier, which is about languages, because obviously, on mine, plainly, I'm in London, so they're all English words. But how does that work with different languages? Because presumably, each local area, particularly if you're in Africa or in Asia, will want to use their own language. So how does that work? And would I then have that same African word that I would need to use, or would there be an English equivalent?
Yeah, so we're actually available currently in 14 different languages. We have a whole raft coming out in the year as well, in 2018. And what you'll find is that actually there isn't a direct translation, and because of the rules I explained earlier on, you can't do direct translations between words. So for each square, there's actually, at the moment, 14 different 3 word addresses on there. But you have the commonality of the GPS coordinate and the location which you can use to translate. So when I come to Prague, I can be told in English, or I spend a lot of time in Germany as well, and they can tell me in English. Or if someone from Czech Republic comes to London, I can give it to them as well.
Another question there, which is about, I mean, I guess it also picks up one of those points about how do you decide on names, because presumably in those 14 different languages, you've got to also avoid words that are offensive in combinations, or how do you do that?
So we have a whole linguistic team that very rigorously go and check. They collate dictionary of words, and then they go and curate that. So we get natural language speakers from that country. And each word is actually checked 10 times by 10 separate people for things like offensiveness, any change in meaning, and if there's any sort of variance or disagreement on it, it would be taken out of the dictionary. So we're very, very sure to make sure, we're very, very confident that when we put those words out there, that we have to make sure they're not offensive for people.
Okay, good. Let's have a look at the poll. Let's see what we've got in terms of your responses to that. Oh, now that's pretty overwhelming, isn't it, really? So would a more accurate addressing system be beneficial to your business? 92% say yes. Tom, it looks like happy days for you.
Yeah, please come and find me afterwards.
Again, these sessions designed to be punchy, so we're going to move on to the next one now. But in the meantime, if you could say thank you to Tom. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.